Before FP 2020 was launched, the family planning community relied almost exclusively on periodic national health surveys, typically conducted every 5 years, to monitor progress. And often it took a year or two to analyze that data. So we were looking at data about the program that was often a couple of years old. So we were driving while looking in the rearview mirror, really. And that's where I think that FP 2020 has been very transformative. The measurement agenda, implemented in partnership with the Performance Monitoring and Evidence Working Group, Track 20, PMA, and many other partners, has transformed the data landscape. For example, instead of waiting 5 years or longer for new data, the FP 2020 core indicators are estimated and reported every year for every country and include the addition of service statistics. So the process of doing this is country-owned and country-led, so that each commitment-making country now has a strengthened national data system for measuring its own progress. The 2020 progress report illustrates the success of this effort. It tells us that we've reached more women and girls. As of July 2020, the total number of women and girls using a modern method of contraception in the 69 FP 2020 focus countries stood at 320 million, up from 260 million when the partnership was launched. Since 2012, an additional 60 million women and girls have chosen to use a modern method of contraception. We're able to more accurately monitor family planning financing as well. This year's report includes domestic expenditures for 54 of the 69 FP 2020 countries. This is a significant achievement for the family planning sector and a major success to build upon. The report also shows that donor governments are increasing their financing for family planning since 2012, reaching a high mark of $1.5 billion, both in 2018 and 2019. And new governments are emerging as consistent donors for the family planning programs. We're also using data more strategically. Countries can now use data to choose the right mix of investments that are appropriate for their situation and plan out detailed programs that will help them reach their evidence-based goals. And with a regular annual process in place to collect and analyze data, program managers can now track how their programs are performing and adjust their strategies. Over the past 8 years, FP 2020 has developed better methods to track resource flows, contraceptive use, and expanded method choice for women and girls, all of which will continue to be critical levers to progress as we look forward to the next decade of family planning. These insights are possible because of the transformation the FP 2020 partners have brought to the data landscape for family planning. Almost all commitment-making countries now have in place an annual process to review national and subnational data on family planning and produce estimates of key progress markers. That is what we call the FP 2020 core indicators. We're seeing the application of these efforts in many ways. For example, the Global Financing Facility has worked with Track 20 in several countries to develop performance metrics and forecasts that inform project designs and financing with quality data and help track project achievements in country. Finally, I'd like to just extend my own personal huge thanks to Beth and to the entire FP 2020 Secretariat for their commitment and tireless efforts over the last 8 years. It's been an incredible journey, and I look forward to the next 10 years as we work to achieve the SDGs by 2030. Continuing to improve our measurement and use of data will aid us on that path. I'd now like to turn it back to Martyn to discuss the annual progress report in greater detail. Thank you.
Many thanks indeed, Chris. The next few minutes will expand on the key points Chris made concerning the progress of the partnership towards key goals over the last 8 years, the impact of the FP 2020 partnership on data and measurement, and the continued advance of the measurement agenda as we move into the next decade. Our session is divided into 3 sections. Assessing progress. My colleague Jason Bremner and I will share key data from the 2019-2020 Annual Progress Report, FP 2020, the Arc of Progress, focusing specifically on what the partnership has achieved since 2012 and progress over the past year. Our second section focuses on data use. Emily Sonneveld of Track 20 and Zenon Mujani from Track 20 and the Ministry of Health in the Democratic Republic of Congo will be highlighting the increase in data availability and use in countries and its use for strategic decision making. And in our third section on the FP 2020 measurement agenda, the co-leads of FP 2020's Performance, Monitoring and Evidence Working Group will highlight the measurement efforts of the FP 2020 partnership and the remaining challenges to address in the next measurement framework to 2030. But let's first turn to progress since 2012, and I'd like to introduce Jason Bremner, Director of Data and Performance Management at FP 2020. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Martin. At the outset of 2020, we knew it would be a challenge to present a complete picture of progress over the 8 years of the partnership. Our process for data reporting begins early in each calendar year, and we're able to incorporate new data collected through the end of the previous year. A complete accounting of progress from 2012 to 2020 would only have been possible once most countries had completed new surveys. And this would have been a few years after the end of the FP 2020 partnership. The emergence of COVID-19 has presented new challenges for progress reporting. While we've become accustomed to real-time data on COVID-19, our family planning indicators largely depend on household and facility surveys, and most of these are temporarily suspended. So this year's progress report provides a glimpse into progress prior to the onset of the pandemic. Today, I'll provide some brief highlights from the progress report, and I'll encourage you to join tomorrow's progress report webinar for a deeper focus on the data, including early insights into COVID-19 impacts. What you see here is a graphic that shows the total number of contraceptive users by year across all the 69 FP 2020 focus countries. You can see on the left side of the graphic that in 2012, there were approximately 260 million users of modern methods of contraception, and in each subsequent year, the total number of contraceptive users has grown. At the midpoint of 2020, we estimate that 320 million women and girls were using modern contraceptive methods. Comparing 2012 to 2020, you can see that we'd reached 60 million additional users of contraception, or approximately half of the ambitious goal of 120 million additional users. Over the same period of time, the number of women of reproductive age has actually grown by about 15 million per year. So just keeping up with this population growth means that many more women and girls need family planning services each year just to maintain contraceptive prevalence. But in most FP 2020 focus countries, modern contraceptive prevalence among all women is rising. And so countries are doing better than just keeping up. They're expanding the availability of services. Understanding this progress depends on looking at regional and individual country data. As of July 2020, the number of users of modern methods of contraception in Africa, for example, had grown by 66% since 2012, from 40 million to more than 66 million women and girls. This growth was most pronounced in Western and Central Africa, where the number of modern contraceptive users has doubled in just 8 years. And in Eastern and Southern Africa, where the number of users has grown by 70%. At a country level, 14 countries have each added more than 1 million additional users of modern contraception since 2012. And in 13 countries, the number of users of modern methods has doubled since 2012. One area of focus of the FP 2020 partnership has been the expansion of method availability and choices. This graphic shows changes over time in method mix based on the most common method and the second most common method in use in countries. The upper two bars are comparing the most commonly used method prior to 2012 and now in a later time period. And the lower two bars are showing the second most common method. This graphic illustrates in particular the emergence of implants, shown here in yellow. Prior to 2012, implants were not commonly used, but today they have emerged as the most commonly used method in several countries, shown in the upper two bars. and the second most common method in a large number of countries, which are shown in those lower two bars. Also emerging, but not shown in this graphic, is the increasing availability of self-injection as another choice. A final important question is whether FP2020's 120 million additional users goal has exacerbated inequities or led to a prioritization of easier to reach populations. To answer this question, we're examining data for signs of inequity in contraceptive gains, looking at wealth groups, levels of education, age, marital status, and urban or rural residence. This figure illustrates just one of these comparisons, showing change in modern contraceptive prevalence among wealth groups between two surveys in Malawi. You can see both the gains among the lowest wealth groups, shown here in the difference between the blue large circle, and a narrowing of inequity in contraceptive use among wealth groups. Overall, our results highlight that gains were seen among relatively disadvantaged groups, including rural women, the least educated, the poorest, and the youngest. Contrary to the early concerns of the family planning community, the impact of the FP2020 partnership on equity appears to be positive, reinforcing the importance of country-specific commitments, policies, and programming that seeks to reach underserved populations. So now I'll turn it back to Martyn. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jason. When FP2020 was launched in 2012, the partnership recognized the urgent need for better tracking and monitoring of resource flows in the sector, and an immense amount of work has happened in this area. In 2019, bilateral family planning funding from donor governments totaled $1.52 billion, on par with the 2018 disbursements of $1.49 billion. Donor government funding for family planning has generally risen since the London Summit of 2012, although there have been fluctuations over the period. In 2019, funding was more than $400 million above the 2012 amount. In addition to bilateral donors, private foundations have also contributed substantial and increased resources to family planning over the period. The US was the largest bilateral donor to family planning in 2019, accounting for 39% of the total bilateral funding. The UK was the second largest donor at 25%, followed by the Netherlands at 13%, Sweden at 7%, and Canada at 6%. Total family planning expenditures in 2018, the most recent year for which domestic government expenditures are available, are estimated to be $4.4 billion across all FP2020 countries. International donors contributed an estimated 48%, domestic governments 35%, and consumers 17%. These proportions vary greatly for different countries, of course. This is FP2020's third year of reporting domestic expenditures at the country level, with the number of countries for which estimates are available increasing each year. This year's table includes estimates for 54 countries, amounting to nearly $1.6 billion in spending. It should be noted that 5 countries, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, and the Philippines, account for 82% of domestic government expenditures on family planning shown here. And so we turn to the data use, the second section of our presentation. It's my great pleasure to hand over to Emily Sonneveld, the director of the Track 20 project at Avenir Health, who will speak more to the impact of the FP2020 partnership on data and measurement. Over to you, Emily.
Over the past 9 years, Track 20 has worked to expand and improve the use of family planning data at the country and global levels. The FP2020 initiative provided an opportunity to galvanize around data, and Track 20 has been thrilled to be a part of that process. This has included leading methodological advances, including developing new methodologies, tools, and indicators, and then standardizing these across countries and globally. And importantly, prioritizing the expansion and use of family planning service statistics. The central part of our work is a network of M&E officers that sit in governments across Africa and Asia within countries that have made commitments to FP2020. These M&E officers work to improve the availability, quality, and use of family planning data. This includes, in many countries, improving the family planning environment within their own HMIS systems. All of this work contributes to more and more effective use of family planning data. Track 20 prioritizes supporting countries to have the data they need when they need it, so it can be strategically leveraged to support decision-making. This often includes creating innovative, interactive, and user-friendly tools and models that governments can engage with directly. These models are often embedded within existing government processes to ensure that the data use is ongoing. The collective work of these M&E officers and their colleagues, with the leadership of their supervisors and family planning programs, has improved the family planning data environment. It provides an opportunity to leverage it moving forward. We look forward to the next decade of family planning and how much we can collectively achieve. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Zenon Mujani, an M&E officer from the DRC, where he will have an opportunity to talk a little bit about how this process has changed the work that he does. Thank you.
Pour ce qui concerne l'amélioration de la compréhension des données ou indicateurs de planification familiale, il faut savoir qu'au début, mon pays, moi et beaucoup d'autres experts, nous avions des difficultés à bien comprendre les données de planification familiale, notamment les utilisatrices additionnelles, les APC, la prévalence contraceptive, les besoins satisfaits, les besoins non satisfaits et même le mode de calcul. Mais les différentes formations que nous avons reçues avec Track 20, ça a été un grand apport parce que ça nous a aidé à bien comprendre ces indicateurs. Alors, le deuxième élément, c'est que pour faire notre travail au quotidien, on disait chaque fois que la RDC a un problème de qualité des données, mais on ne savait pas de façon spécifique dire quel est le problème en rapport avec la qualité de données, quelle est l'ampleur, et c'est dans quel coin du pays où les problèmes se posent le plus. On n'était pas assez outillés. Comme vous savez, la RDC, c'est un pays vaste qui a 26 provinces et plus de 17 000 formations sanitaires. Donc, faire une analyse de la qualité des données, ça demande de disposer des outils adaptés et une méthodologie adaptée. Et donc, c'est là où Track 20 nous a beaucoup aidé en mettant à notre disposition l'outil SS2MU, qui est l'outil que nous avons le plus utilisé, parce que dans nos estimations, la RDC ne pouvait pas utiliser ces données de routine. Nous avons donc utilisé le SS2MU pour mettre en évidence les problèmes de qualité qui se posent avec nos données de planification familiale et aussi avoir un contenu de feedback aux provinces. Et ça ne s'est pas arrêté là. Nous avons été en mesure de former les provinciaux pour que chaque province, à son tour, puisse aussi utiliser le SS2MU et préparer le feedback aux différentes zones de santé. Et l'exercice a été très intéressant parce que l'appui de Track 20 à travers les ateliers de consensus qui regroupent les participants de province, nous avons dû partager longuement avec eux sur les analyses des qualités des données et le feedback à faire aux provinces. Et fort de cette expérience, Track 20 a eu à nous demander de pouvoir appuyer à son temps le Tchad, la Côte d'Ivoire et le Togo. Nous avons aussi beaucoup appris d'eux par rapport à la qualité des données.
FP2020's Performance Monitoring and Evidence Working Group are a group of global measurement experts and a key part of FP2020. Back in 2012, they established a set of core indicators that provided our annual global readout of key progress markers across countries. And over the last several years, they've continued to address measurement issues and improvements needed in the family planning field. Data and evidence-informed decision-making continue to be central to our next decade indeed. So we're now delighted to hear from the co-leads of the PME Working Group to share a word about this effort and the continuing work of the PME Working Group.
Hello, I'm Eileen Spicer from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Hello everyone, I'm Pauline Tra from IPPF Africa Regional Office.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bradley from Apt Associates.
As you have heard from other speakers, since 2012, FP2020 and its measurement partners have worked to harmonize and align reporting, improve indicators and methodologies, and develop the annual progress report that has just been presented. Over the years, FP2020 and its measurement partners have also published commentaries on measurement, established additional indicators and datasets to promote measurement alignment, and most recently have worked on a measurement learning series, all of which can be found on the FP2020 Data Hub. the FP2020 Performance Monitoring and Evidence Working Group that I have been honored to be part of and that with my fellow co-leads we are representing today has been central to these efforts. This group of family planning measurement experts from implementing partners, academia, donors, and multilateral agencies provides technical advice and support for monitoring progress towards FP2020's goals, promotes the use of data for programming, advocacy, and decision-making, and contributes to the strengthening of evidence in key dimensions of family planning. This group developed FP2020's measurement framework that informs all of these efforts.
Application of FP2020 measurement framework has led to important contribution to the field of family planning. For example, the global community now monitors modern contraceptive use among all women of reproductive age, rather than just married and in-union women, and this has helped to refocus the global family planning agenda. Measuring, monitoring, and reporting modern contraceptive use for all women reinforces the right of all women to use contraception. It requires countries and global partners to examine trends in contraceptive use among the broader population, not just the married women, and encourages policymakers to develop specific programs for the different contraceptive needs of married and unmarried women and adolescent girls.
The FP2020 measurement framework has always been a living document with indicators added and adjusted over time. In the next phase of the partnership, the Performance Monitoring and Evidence Working Group is updating the framework and its indicators to measure contraceptive use more holistically, making central women's and girls' choices to use or not use contraception, measuring the health system that provides contraception, and the policy and regulatory environment that supports women and makes it possible for them to use a method of their choice. We're tackling the challenge of how to better measure the essential issues of equity, informed choice, and quality of care, and calling for the addition of uncertainty intervals to our estimates. Together, these advancements will improve our understanding, give us new tools to measure progress, and bring to life FP2020's commitment to family planning and ensuring the primacy of women's choice.
Across the 69 FP2020 focus countries, modern contraceptive prevalence has risen by more than 2 percentage points since 2012, a significant success story. This insight and a myriad others are possible because of the transformation FP2020 partners have brought to the data landscape for family planning. There will continue to be many challenges ahead, including those that are being posed by COVID-19. Yet we are resolute in charting our measurement course for the next decade to continue to harmonize and align reporting, improve indicators and methodologies, and enhance the infrastructure and capacity to generate and use robust data for decision-making in the service of our 2030 vision.